Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. This will show the 2022 roadmap that we've put together for the product side. And I'm happy to go through each of these items one by one, just to give you all some more context. If there are any clarifying questions, happy to take questions. So Q1 just wrapped up, and so the items that you see here are items that were already delivered. Bidirectional FastBTC, we enabled withdrawals from FastBTC back in January. We also launched the Mint Bonding Curve app on testnet in January, and in February we had the Perpetuals competition on testnet. Now we are in Q2, and the first item that we're going to be wrapping up and delivering is spot and margin limit orders. Development is finished, and now we're just putting the final touches on the marketing plan before we go live with that. So you can expect to see that in the near future. And the next item that is coming is Zero and Sovryn Mint. They are launching at the same time, and we'll be doing a private beta release for that in Q2. And the Mint Bonding Curve app is going to be moving from testnet to mainnet. And then later in Q2, we'll have another Perpetuals competition, this time on mainnet, and we'll be wrapping up the bulk of our work on the graph integration, which should speed up data loading in the main Sovryn app, like in the user history tables, trade history, loan history, portfolio balances, vesting, et cetera, et cetera. And that should speed up the loading history as well as improve the accuracy of the data that's being shown. And then in Q3, we will have the public release of Zero in Sovryn Mint, and as well as the public release of the Perpetuals mainnet. And then we also have planned to do a complete redesign of the Borrow app. It's one of the oldest apps that we currently have in the Sovryn interface, and is in much need of some love, and we plan on giving it the attention and care that it deserves in Q3. And then the last bullet point item here are Gnosis safe Plutocracy apps. So these will not be user-facing per se. They will be open source, of course. So if they're useful to you as a user of Gnosis Safe, you'll be able to, of course, use them in your Gnosis Safe wallet. But they're primarily being developed for the Exchequer Committee and folks that work with the Exchequer Committee to help manage the Treasury and vesting contracts, and it'll also be used by the Guardian multisig to make it easier to pause contracts if there are any issues, or veto proposals in case a malicious proposal gets submitted to the Plutocracy system. And then in Q4, this is a bit further out, but there are plans to launch new Perpetuals markets. So the first Perpetuals market that will go live is BTC USD, but there are plans in the pipeline to launch, to continue adding new Perpetual markets, new collateral types. The first collateral asset is BTC, of course, but we could support additional collateral types and additional languages to be able to expand into more geographic and language markets. There's going to be work on a Sovryn SDK, which should make it easier for developers to start building on the Sovryn protocol and all of the functionality that we built out in the Sovryn smart contracts. A deeper Lightning integration. So some of you may have seen the Marduk exchange that Sovryn gave a grant to, which enables doing trustless cross-chain atomic swaps between Lightning Bitcoin and RBTC. And we would like to continue deepening that integration and strengthening that relationship to make Sovryn even more Lightning native. And then we have planned to do a redesign of the Plutocracy app. So voting and proposals at first, but also potentially staking as well. We'll see how much time we have to be able to dedicate to this, but definitely voting and proposals apps we would like to improve so that the Plutocracy system continues to improve in usability and accessibility. And that is what 2022 looks like for the product roadmap. Like I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions about any of these specific items or anything that's not on the list.
So, John, am I correct in understanding that Zero as a product will be available to start generating revenue for the platform in Q3?
Zero will be able to start generating revenue even during the private beta. So although it is a private beta, it will be on mainnet and it will be generating fees for Sovryn stakers.
So if you could explain to me and the rest of the listeners, what does private beta mean in terms of the number of users and where will those users be coming from? Will there be gated access, or what does private beta mean essentially?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great question. So it will be gated access at first, and it will basically be, people can sign up for a wait list, and then we'll be adding people to the wait list in batches. And this is basically to, we want to get, first, kind of stress test the system, add users a little bit at a time, so we can kind of increase debt and issuance of the stablecoin on a gradual basis, and monitor for any issues, because this is a brand new protocol on RSK. But yeah, I mean, if you get added to the waitlist, we'll be adding folks to the private beta in batches, and you'll either get into the private beta, or by the time we get to your place in line on the list, we'll have opened it up for the public. But
may I ask what kind of user numbers it is that the team is looking at for this period? When you say batches of 5, batches of 100.
We'll release more information about those specific plans when the private beta is released.
Awesome, thanks, John.
Mm-hmm. Great questions, though. I see a bunch of questions in the chat, so I'll go through these. The first question is the graph integration. I think I answered that, but basically it improves performance of loading data and data accuracy. That's shown for basically all of the user data that is loaded in the app.
May I add some context to that, John?
Sure.
Great,
go ahead.
Cool. So I guess one of the problems that Sovryn and any project building on RSK has faced is the lack of tooling. We've spoken often about that, both from the dropper side and from the Sovryn side. And the graph is one of those pieces of tooling that dApp builders and users are used to that exist on Ethereum. And essentially what the graph does is it indexes on-chain data and makes that data available in a cached form to be served to the front end in a much quicker fashion. It also allows for data analysis as a result of that people can look at what's called a subgraph, which the Sovryn dApp or the Dropper dApp would have a specific subgraph, which is tailored to the exact contract calls and information that's being displayed to the user, and even allows for a much more broader display of information to be tracked and analyzed, which might not be available in the dApp. And so the graph is something that needs chain support, so that needs support of the RSK nodes. And the graph team has been focused on providing this integration for other chains and hasn't really provided that for RSK. And as a result of the Sovryn team building this, the Sovryn team was able to spin up a private version of the graph node and to get Sovryn's, the dApp's information working on it. We're doing the same for Dropper. We're also building on the graph protocol, and this is actually a key part of the partnership of Dropper with RSK, is that we will be building out an open source version of the graph along with Docker images and documentation so that other people building in the RSK ecosystem will be able to do this integration. So Sovryn and Dropper together are leading the way to enable the graph to provide full support and have better tooling for other people building in the ecosystem. If that gives the community a little bit more scope on the importance of the graph. And I saw a question as well about what's the difference between the graph and Covalent. Covalent also provides an API and calls for serving this type of data. But Covalent is also limited in the degree of support. So they're ahead of the graph in terms of offering support to dApps building the ecosystem, but it is more limited in the granularity and type of information that can be provided by a subgraph on the graph protocol.
Yeah, and it's a great service, but it is a hosted third-party service, whereas the graph gives you the ability to host your own and kind of build out your own subgraph and specify your own API endpoints. So it's a bit more flexible in that way. But for builders just getting started, Covalent can be useful enough to get going. Yeah, thanks a lot for providing that additional context, Exiled. As you said, we have already built out our RSK implementation of the subgraph. And so right now we are continuing to build out that subgraph and actually integrate it into the front end. So this is actually already happening. Some parts of the dApp will be updated, and maybe just one day you'll notice that it's faster, or you'll notice that the data maybe is more consistently accurate than some of the old data, which might be out of date or otherwise using incorrect formulas. We've tried to make sure that everything that is currently shown in the dApp is accurate, but sometimes people rightfully point out that something doesn't look right, and so we're making sure from the start that with these subgraphs everything is showing up correctly.
To give more context to the community so that they can understand that technically. So the problems that we've seen where if there's inefficient data being displayed in the dApp is because the dApp was previously calling on-chain data. And so there's a delay, and you have the spins and possibly inaccurate data because of those calls. And so the graph that is indexed all of the everything that has been done on Sovryn, and so that the data will be much more accurate for the user, and we won't see those types of glitches happening in the interface.
Yeah, accurate and up to date. The graph is great for that. So I think that covers that question pretty well. And in the interest of time, we'll move on. And if anyone has any follow-up questions or anything on the roadmap topic, we can come to it at the end of the call. So I think that concludes the roadmap topic. I'll move on to discuss the governance updates that I was planning to give.
Hey, John, hi, this is Yago. I just managed to join.
Hey, Yago.
Hi.
Welcome.
A bunch of us were given some bad information apparently, and so those of us in Miami are joining a bit late, unfortunately. So I think I missed the last, everything based up until now, but I just wanted to say one thing about the roadmap. So the roadmap that we have now is through to the end of the year. We're going to be expanding this roadmap over the coming weeks. We should add to it also a longer-term view, but we wanted to provide right now the roadmap to the end of the year. And of course, the roadmap is subject to change, both in terms of our development, but also there's been a lot of activity and interest in the community around various aspects of what it is that we're focused on. And so if, SIPs or community focus drives different kinds of priorities over time, then the roadmap can. However, I think the fact that, I think the roadmap is in line and is a strong continuation with what we presented last quarter. And I think it provides a very, very good, and this is how we should be thinking about it, a very good guide in terms of how we expect things to progress, develop, and what we expect to be focusing on. That's just what I wanted to add about that.
Yeah, thanks, Yago. That's a great set of qualifiers and additional context on that. So moving on to governance updates, we had, since the last community call, we introduced, voted on, and approved a SIP 43, which was an unexpected, rather last-minute SIP that was introduced and voted on to fix a vulnerability that was discovered in the staking contract. Shout out to Immunify and the security researcher who discovered this vulnerability as part of our bug bounty program. The bug bounty program definitely proving its value there. I'll leave it to Aurora to discuss the technical details of the vulnerability and how we fixed it in more detail in her updates on this call. But wanted to note that this was a governance event that happened since the last community call. And for the last couple of community calls, I've been mentioning that we were planning to have some SIPs regarding the transfer of smart contracts from Exchequer Multisig to Plutocracy ready for review by the end of March. However, because of SIP 43, this work was delayed a bit, not only because personnel resources were kind of diverted to working on SIP 43, but also because SIP 43 has a direct impact on the plans that we originally had. One of the changes that we were planning to introduce was basically for the ability for Plutocracy to override any veto that the Plutocracy Guardian would try to do in response to a malicious proposal. That way, if the Plutocracy Guardian is not prudent in their choice of proposals to veto, just because of bad judgment or because the Plutocracy Guardian is corrupted or for whatever reason, Plutocracy would have a way to overcome that with sufficient and overwhelming support for a proposal. However, we decided that because of the nature of the SIP 43 vulnerability, which again, Aurora will go into the technical details of, we decided that it would be most prudent to take a more cautious approach to this particular change and to remove this veto override capability from the scope of work for the SIPs that we have planned regarding the transfer of smart contracts from Exchequer to Plutocracy. So assuming that there are no other unexpected major causes for delay, we will have these two SIPs published for y'all to review by the time of our next community call. So 2 weeks from now, we'll publish the SIP sometime in that time period. But just wanted to let you all know, if you remembered that we were going to be posting these by the end of March, if you were wondering why you hadn't seen those, that is the reason why. And those are the only governance updates that I have to report today. And I will pass it over to Aurora to continue with her development updates.
All right, thank you. So I will directly start off with the vulnerabilities we had and have on the staking contract. And I will begin with the first one, which we already mitigated and for which we paused the contract last week. And also the pausing functionality was rather built last minute for it because we did not have a way to pause the contract prior to this, which was on our side because the protocol is possible, the loan tokens are possible. We construct all of our systems in a way that they are possible in the event of an emergency, but the staking contract was missing such a functionality. So when we were presented with that vulnerability, we decided to not disclose it to the public, of course, because with a SIP, the nature is that it's open and visible to anyone, and we could not leave it open for exploit. And the best option we saw was to take this opportunity to finally introduce a emergency pause to the staking contract, and then openly show the exploit or the vulnerability and its mitigation to the community for a vote. And that worked very well, so I think it turned out to be the right decision to do it that way. The bug was allowing an attacker to manipulate his voting power. Basically, an attacker could use a error with delegation to get almost indefinite voting power, and they were supposed to use the extend staking duration function where you're extending until the same time until you're already staked. And well, we closed this vulnerability, but afterwards we also took time to just dive deeper to see if there is an underlying issue actually which we should solve rather than just the entry point like we did on that quick fix. And we did find that there's actually an underlying issue which needs to be solved, which opens the staking contract up for similar potential exploits. So voting power manipulation is still be possible on the staking contract, not in such a simple way as to extend your staking duration to the same date, but in a rather crafty way where you have to execute different functions on the same block for it to work. And we already have the fix for it, but it took us longer just because we did the deep analysis and because it was quite challenging to introduce the changes due to certain constraints we had around the contract size and just also making sure that we're not breaking anything else by introducing this. And because the staking contract is one of the most critical pieces of our system, we are now taking sufficient time for reviewing it, for making sure that it's covering all of the potential cases, for making sure that we're not introducing new problems with these changes, and are just focusing a lot of our time and effort on it. And it's looking good. I'm quite confident, or very confident actually, that we properly manage the root cause, and there is going to be a zip for you to review soon, but I do not expect to go it out before next week, just to give us the time to be safe and not rush things. All right, so much about the exploits. Are there any specific questions around this before I continue with the regular dev update? All right, I will continue then.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question from a very big layman. Did we dodge a big bullet, a little bullet, a so-so bullet? Was this potentially a massive deal, or?
I mean, it would have been, I would consider it a critical issue just because it's voting power manipulation, but it's not as critical as that funds would have been at risk, because we designed the governance system in a way that there is a guardian. And I'm very happy that we made this decision, because this is exactly the kind of situation for which you need a guardian. The guardian is currently the exchequer, which means that the exchequer can veto governance decisions. It cannot force governance decisions, but it can keep them from being executed. This is a power which you would ideally not want to have any party to have in a decentralized system. So at some point it should be removed. But especially in the beginning, it's very, very helpful to have it in cases like we had now. Because if someone would have managed to obtain that voting power and create a proposal, there would have been very little which we could still have done, because when you're voting on a transaction, what really counts is the voting power you had at the time the proposal was created, which means that we would have the attacker would already have had a massive voting power, and we wouldn't have had the chance to generate enough voting power ourselves to outvote the attacker. So this would have been critical. But because the guardian is in place, the worst which could have happened was the blocking of the governance system, because the guardian could always stop the proposals, but then there could have been a voting power war when it came to pushing the fix, for example, because the attacker could have decided to fight against the SIP and to also acquire lots of voting power just to always downvote any proposal which is trying to introduce a fix. Although this would have been very expensive with time. So while I think it is a critical issue, I also think it's, because it did not really risk any funds, it's, and it would have, I think the attacker would have stopped the voting power war at some point just because it becomes too expensive. So I think that there was actually not that much at risk in the end.
Okay, thank you. That answers a wonderful and a great also. Just for layman people, I'm sure this is out there, and if not, I mean, a summary like that is wonderful for people who are just simple to hear, because you addressed one of the things that came to mind about the decentralization aspect, why it's important in the early project, and I think you articulated it really well, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will add that we plan on releasing a written kind of post-mortem of the vulnerabilities and the response, but we're still working through the actual mitigations and solutions. So I think it'll be a couple of weeks before we have the bandwidth to write up a more detailed report. But I think that's great feedback. We'll be sure to include that information. Thanks.
Yeah, and I totally understand. And I just wanted to make sure that that low-level, simple approach to explaining it was good for somebody like me, which I would like to think there's more people like me than the smart people like you all, but who knows? So thanks again, guys.
Awesome, thanks.
Great, thanks.
Was there another question there? I heard someone else speaking.
Yes, if you let me, TM here. I would have the question about the guardian or guardians. Where did they or this mechanism came from? And I tell you, I heard about it like, I don't know, a day ago or so, and I never, since the beginning of the protocol, had these guardians on my radar. So it would be nice to know how it is implemented, how it came to it, and basically the question is why I don't know about it. Maybe I missed it, I'm not sure.
You must have missed it because it was there from day one.
Oh, really? Okay.
From the beginning with the Guardian in place, yes, with the thought to abandon it at some point, but to have it in the beginning. Yeah.
All right, great. So then I didn't say the word.
It's fine.
The Guardian contract are listed on the wiki and explained on the wiki. Actually, it was one of the first pieces of information that came up onto the wiki and was been expanded on.
Yeah, you mean in general.
All right, great. Thanks.
All right. I will be moving on then with the dev update. So we also finally finished the development on the limit order and trading update. We finished the QA, which was taking much more time than we would have liked. And the release is ready on the development side, but we are holding back on it to just make sure that we're also ready to market it appropriately and get the most out of it. And yeah, but this is already very good news because it also means that we do not have to spend more resources on it going forward. What some might have noticed is that we increased the FastBTC off-ramp limit to 0.1 Bitcoin. I also saw that people were asking on the channels to increase it further, and I do understand this, but we are very cautious here. I think I mentioned it in previous calls. FastBTC off-ramp was reviewed twice, but still we are getting a third very extensive review by this authority, which we would want to be complete before we set the limit symmetrical to the on-ramp, so also in the area of around 3 Bitcoin. And until then, we're just going to increase it in baby steps as we gain confidence. And this is just because FastBTC is very complex and security critical, and we really do not want to take any chances, and we're taking security serious, have been taking it serious from day one. So please have some patience here with the slow speed of the limit increases, but it is going to happen. We've been continuously working on further FastBTC improvements as well, such as a reclaiming and refunding functionality in case you are trying to use the off-ramp, but your transaction doesn't get processed for whichever reason, so you have the option to reclaim it and do not have to wait until the service is operating again. And other rather internal improvements like an automated replenishing for the off-ramp multisig, which is just making it much easier for the core team, and where we will have an update next week with a potential short maintenance mode, which will not be of much effect to users. We are also preparing the 0 beta release. Light already mentioned it, so I'm not going into more details here. And we have been working for a while on different bridge improvements to reduce the gas cost. I think we're getting closer to the point where we can already deploy one of the improvements, and second one is going to start soon. So what we already almost finished is an off-chain signature exchange, because currently the federators are voting each one on each and every transaction, which means that for each bridge transfer there are 3 transactions required, which is just generating costs, which in the end the user has to pay. So with this update, we will just send 1 transaction because the federators are exchanging the signatures off-chain. So this will already help with reducing the gas costs, and we can give on this reduction in gas costs to the users as well. So we expect the fees on the bridges to drop. The next improvement we're looking to have on the bridge are dynamic gas fees, because currently they're just updated like once a month on the smart contracts. They are static and they need to have a large buffer just because we do not update them rather frequently. So by having dynamic gas costs on the smart contract, we should be also able to reduce the costs for the bridge transfers drastically. But this is going to take some time. We are also doing a lot of refactoring work at the moment. That's on the smart contract side. When it comes to margin trading, for example, or reward claiming, where we know that these transactions are consuming a lot of gas and we already know what we can do to improve it. So we finally started working on those. So also looking forward to reduce transaction costs there in the near future. And a huge effort is going on the front-end side to introduce atomic components to speed up the development speed on the front end in the future as well. So these tasks are taking a lot of time. There's a lot of progress on perps, where Vasily is going to go into more detail afterwards, so I'm not going to go into more detail here. There's much progress in our gathering of analytics, and this allows us to move towards data-driven decision-making more than we had before, which should be of benefit. And, well, like we already spoke about the graph before, so the graph progress is good, and we are close to start the front-end integration of our graph. All right, because it's already late, I'm going to, I think, I do not have to go into more detail of anything else. I just want to say two more things. One is I want to highlight some work done in the community, and the other point is that we are looking for front-end developers amongst others. So please make sure to check out the open positions. And there is also a reward for finding talent. You can reach out to Selena for more details if you think you have a good candidate. Our open positions are on the wiki, and the CVs can be sent to talent@sovryn.app. So this will be great. We're really, really direly needing very good front-end developers. On the community side, we had two projects, or well, there are more projects going on, but I want to mention two. One is the RSK permission revocation app, which is now coming soon, but we already got it for review. This was handled by community member Roscoe, and so thanks to Roscoe, and also thanks to David Saroy for the coordination. And another community member, Mick13, created a better fallback support for RPC nodes, and this is also going to come soon once we had the chance to review it. So thanks a lot. This is really, really awesome for all of us. We're super happy when we see that the community is producing just new stuff and helping us move forward. That's amazing. Thanks, guys. That's it from my side, and I promised you that Vasily is going to provide an update on what's happened on the trip sites, so I'm handing off the word to him.
Thank you. So I'll give a quick update. In the Perpetual testnet competition, many users asked about limit orders and stop orders. We have now finalized the backend for limit orders and stop limit orders, meaning the smart contracts are ready, the relayers are ready, and what's missing is the front end. We will probably be able to start the front end development next week. Then currently we are also testing the front end with a second perpetual pair, BNB US dollar collateralized in Bitcoin, which doesn't mean we are starting with that perpetual tool, but we're testing it. Then on the audit front, we got an audit report back from...
Vasily, maybe just to give people context, if you could explain what that means, that you're trying a different pair and why, what that opens up for purposes.
Okay, yes, sure. So in the competition, we had only one pair, which is Bitcoin US dollar, where you collateralize in Bitcoin, meaning you bring margin in Bitcoin. Now with the perps, we could have any asset. Another asset is BNB US dollar, and as you can tell, there's no Bitcoin involved in BNB US dollar. But with the perpetuals, the only thing you ever need to own is Bitcoin. So you come to Sovryn, bring your Bitcoin, and you participate in the market movements of BNB US dollar. Profit and loss will be paid in Bitcoin. And that's what we're currently testing in the front end with that pair. And what it also means is that once we are able to have such a different pair, because here we have 3 currencies involved, BNB, US dollar, and Bitcoin. So once we are ready to handle both at once, we can add basically and theoretically any pair that fulfills certain properties, which opens the door for many, many assets. Okay, I hope that was clear. Otherwise, you can ask.
Can I ask a question on that? If I'm understanding it correctly, it's very exciting, but can I clarify? So one of the things I see a lot is people complain about the inability to get super big gains because Bitcoin is so more mature than other markets. So this would almost alleviate that, allow you exposure to other assets, but just stay in the Bitcoin ownership ecosphere. So potentially get the gains of having exposure to the other assets without having to actually go and buy them instead of Bitcoin. Am I understanding that right?
Yes. So because you could, that BNB US dollar example, that could be anything else. Let's say it could also be theoretically S&P 500 index, and you own Bitcoin. So you bring your Bitcoin, you participate in the market movements of another asset just with Bitcoin, and you're paid in Bitcoin. So yes, I agree with your statement.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, if all this gets implemented, I feel like this project's just so underappreciated. I hope you guys are really, really serious. It's very exciting. So thank you. Appreciate your efforts.
Cool. I think so too. Then audit. We got an audit report back from Hacken on the Perpetual smart contracts. They have not found any critical issues. We are currently implementing the recommendations, and I think we will have the final audit, so meaning we resubmit and get an answer, and we'll have the final audit most likely by end of this month ready. Okay, that was it from my side, and I'm handing back to whoever is next. Unless you have some questions, of course.
Thanks, Vasily. I think in the interest of time, we'll move all questions to the end after everyone's had their updates. So next up is adoption updates. I just want to check, Iago, if you want to take anything here, and if not, I've got a few.
No, I don't at this point. I'll answer any questions, but there's chaos going on right now, and also we have a very cool presentation by Factory DAO, which I want to make sure we have adequate time for. So I think we skip that, and we can answer any questions that come up.
Sure, right. I'll quickly blast us through a few quick updates then from adoption. If you can't tell already, Iago, Inglandia, Magnus, and a few others are in Miami at a booth with RSK and some other ecosystem partners like Babelfish and Money on Chain. So by the sounds of it, that's going very well. The rebrand activities with Patton are going extremely well. We recently decided on a direction, and we'll be releasing some designs and some other things for some people in the community to view and give feedback on. I would imagine before or around the time of the next community call.
Just a reminder on that, we have a town hall on branding and positioning of the Sovryn project as a whole on April 19th. And this is going to be the second in a series of adoption-focused town halls.
Yes, thanks, Iago. Community managers recently completed a bunch of training for the new intercom system, and like we've been promising, we'll be releasing a test area very soon for that, so everyone can start using that and getting used to it. Unicom was over at the LA Token YouTube channel earlier today for an AMA. If anyone doesn't know who they are, they're an exchange who listed SOV by themselves. So you can see the previous announcements to listen back to that AMA if you'd like. And there is a Sovryn Mayhem event running for that AMA. The rewards will be announced tomorrow and paid tomorrow. Lastly, there's been a bunch of stuff recently in the channels, a bunch of activity in the Telegram Dojo channel about a series of SIPs that a lot of people in the community and primarily the BCW community want to see made. So far, I haven't seen any detailed or what looks to be final SIPs uploaded to the forums. So just to make people aware, I've written so far 4 SIPs to separate everyone's ideas that everyone's had. And I should be hopefully finalizing those and uploading either tonight or tomorrow, depending on how complex they get. Hopefully it takes everyone's thoughts into account and we can move forward very briskly there. That is it from us. On adoption, I think we'll move questions right to the end. Up next is a presentation from Factory DAO. They are the DAO who creates DAOs. I'd like to introduce Dr. Nick and possibly Naomi as well.
Right, so I'd like to give these guys a bit of an introduction. Factory DAO are a very cool partner who have joined the Sovryn ecosystem. What Factory DAO do is make it really easy to spin up DAOs, which can have their own rules, their own governance, their own treasury. This is a huge step forward for the Sovryn ecosystem and something that we've wanted to have for a long time. First of all, it allows us to much more easily create delegate DAOs. What a delegate DAO would be is today most people, if they're staking, they have to vote themselves. This allows you to delegate your vote to a DAO and then to have 2 advantages. 1, to vote collectively so that you can aggregate vote power, and 2, to have DAOs which specialize in specific issues. Could be adoption, could be budget, could be treasury, could be anything. The second big thing here is it allows us to start creating DAOs with specific purposes that are basically sub-DAOs for the community. So for example, we could create New York Sovryn DAO and fund it to start having meetups and events in New York, and do the same thing for cities around the world. We could do the same thing for college campuses. We already have the first DAO focused on marketing, which is being set up, called the Whispers Dao. We are in the process of putting together one for those people who are interested in focusing on tokenomics. So this, I think, is going to provide a very powerful tool set for us to start making it much easier for the community to seamlessly and permissionlessly get involved with engaging, moving forward, the governance and the actual initiatives and activities around the project.
Amazing.
I should have.
I'm here, right. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. That's absolutely spot on. Really excited to be here and to introduce ourselves to all you guys. We're big fans of the project. I've known Yago for a few years. I think Naomi's here somewhere, who's a co-founder of us, known Yago forever, I think. And we've been around in crypto for a long time. We're very passionate about pretty much the same things. I see DAOs as a real path to sovereignty in the sense that you can do governance without governments, right? That's kind of institutions, governments tends to do the governance thing, collective organization at scale. And we see DAOs as the means for people to really coordinate and do work that would not be possible outside of normally a kind of institutional-like structure. So the kind of thing that Edam was talking about there was, breaking down very complex problems into sub-problems, sub-DAOs, and providing governance realms, governance spaces for people to negotiate and have lots and lots of parallel discussions all at once. So I popped a deck there in the general. I'm not going to present anything on a screen here, but you can peruse that at your leisure. But just to give you a high level of what we're doing, We're essentially a DAO tooling project. Our vision is we think DAOs are going to radically change the world. We think mass online coordination is a route to a new means of social coordination. And we just want to make it happen. We're trying to build the tools that facilitate people to launch tokens, launch NFTs, conduct their own governance, manage their own decentralized markets. And I see there being an absolutely immense synergy with what you guys are doing here with Sovryn. I called myself a Bitcoin maximalist for a long time. But in recent years, because of the expressive nature of Ethereum, I've spent a lot of time in that space. But what Sovryn and RSK does here is allow us to bring that innovation to you guys, and that's what our plan is. And it was one of our very, very first targets to come here and bring DAOs to the Bitcoin ecosystem. So what we've done with you guys recently, we were sort of quiet in the background launch, but we launched a sub-DAO or a mini DAO, whatever you want to call it, with the Sovryn Whispers community. They've minted NFTs. We're particularly bullish on NFT DAOs to do this sub-DAO, meta-DAO structure. So this allows you to create domain-specific DAOs with small communities, curated membership, and we focus on voting and decision-making tools that are there to facilitate you guys to reach decisions and genuinely do decentralized governance, to actually allow, instead of a small number of people make decisions, a large number of people make decisions. So in order to do that, we've got a NFT minting suite, which allows you to design your membership, design how many people can have however many tokens, create a aesthetic for that community, and then release those tokens in a permissionless way, and then use those tokens in a voting environment. But it's not just voting. You'll be able to do decentralized decision making there. It's foruming tools. There's ways to engage in dialogue, so we collect votes and dialogue. And as we progress into this, we can start to build more elaborate meta-DAO structures. We can launch DAO tokens, more NFTs, all this kind of stuff. So we're introducing ourselves as essentially partners in your ecosystem, and we want to facilitate your goals here. And listening to your call here is just fantastic, to be quite honest. It feels like real decentralized governance already. There's community participation, there's openness, transparency. There's the desire for sort of collective sovereignty, and we just want to help you with your goals. Our goal is to be multi-chain, but we're one of the first targets for us, and we're glad to be here. Early days with everyone, and the opportunity is here for, if you guys want to set up a DAO, we can talk to you. We're always very open. We run as a DAO ourselves. So all the tools that we create are built via a decentralized organization. We're designing the tools to build these tools together. So if anyone wants to get really into DAOs, we can collaborate on that as well. But yeah, I'm happy to really take any questions, riff on DAOs for a few minutes if anyone's got any questions or wants to chat about it. I have a question regarding your tooling for RSK. Is it possible for anybody to just come along and spin up a DAO? And that would be my first question. I have a follow-up, but I'll let you answer that one. Yeah, it's as yet, not quite. So our goal, each of our dApps have 3 stages of development. Version 1 for us is a kind of testing live mainnet test. It's risky, it's experimental. And then version 2 is iterated based on user feedback. We try to tune the tools based on people's experience of using them. These are like socio-technical systems. We don't quite know how they're going to play out until we throw people at them. So we respond them in version 2, and then in version 3, they become completely permissionless. We have 2 apps in that state at the moment are liquidity mining tools and our token distribution tools, more fungible token based, but we are heading in that direction for the whole suite. So for now, you need a bit of assistance from our DAO in order to do that, and it's a bit of a collaborative environment. There's very quick paths to that. For example, there's a possibility to do a large NFT mint, and then you just use our tools to create your own sub-DAOs, and we don't need to be involved. But there's multiple paths to this, but okay, very much cool. Makes sense.
May I ask you a question?
Please.
So is this something that we can integrate into the Dropper protocol, that people could mint via the Dropper protocol, integrate your contracts or whitelist them so that we offer that platform? Or is it something that you intend on deploying independently?
We're probably I've not heard of Dropper protocol, I'll be quite honest. We are very focused in our ecosystem. The space moves so fast around us. We intend to be a kind of open DAO tooling project.
So Nick, just some quick context. Dropper is, like you guys, one of the projects building in our ecosystem, and they provide a way to create NFT drops.
Okay.
Let's rather than discuss this right now, you and I should have a call.
Yeah. Let's have a chat about that. We've developed a minting suite for issuing NFTs. It's specifically targeted towards governance distributions.
I understand your product, and I know who you are.
Okay, good. I'm glad you know about us. Yeah, let's have a chat. Absolutely. Well,
cool.
Potential integrations there. Sure.
Ping me. I'm Michael Parenti on Discord here in the channel, so
wonderful.
Ping me in the channel or send me a private message, okay?
I will do. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Awesome work, man.
Yeah,
to hear that you're joining the ecosystem.
Yeah, we're glad to be here. So we've got any other DAO questions or thoughts, comments on what we're doing?
I just had a quick follow-up. Are your tools built with an existing DAO platform like DAO Stack or Aragon or Moloch or something like that, or are these new smart contracts like built from scratch?
These are all ground-up builds. So we've got 6 dApps which we've built over the last 18 months, completely from scratch, brand new designs. We're trying to iterate away from I consider kind of first iteration of the DAO idea, monolithic smart contracts, basically elaborate multi-sigs with token-weighted voting. I believe a sort of modular design is the way to go. Now, that means we could, in fact, interact with Aragon or Moloch DAOs. For example, I actually love the Moloch DAO framework. It's I've been fascinated with it for years, and talking to some of the people from DAO House and various other places that to potentially use Moloch structures as the treasury system. At the moment, we're rather multi-sig based. I think permissionless, trustless execution is probably the last thing that's going to happen, but we're working on it. So we've got a system for conducting sort of zero-knowledge elections using NFT governance that can execute arbitrary smart contracts, which is the route to stitching together a modular DAO framework. Aragon, I'm less sure about that we could integrate directly with. Moloch, I can certainly see a lot of paths to, but we consider ourselves a kind of standalone DAO framework. You can do everything you need to do in DAOs with us. We're a hop away from trustless execution, but I believe we'll be there in the next couple of months.
Very cool. Thanks.
Now we're sorry, Nick. I think now we're a few minutes over the end of the call time. So
yeah, of course, we've gone over.
We can maybe stop the recording on Zico as usual.
So I don't think we need to stop the recording yet. Maybe some people want to ask questions. There's one last thing. I see the work with Factory DAO and then integrating it with some of the other stuff that we're doing, like Dropper, as an exponential opportunity for Sovryn. Our ability now to start creating small teams who are going to be able to take initiative to improve governance and improve decision making That's a superpower. If we can build out a community which is very easy to join, to take initiative in, and starts making better and better decisions, and is more easily able to tap into the collective intelligence of the sovereigns that are on this call and are in the community, I think that is something which we'll start to see exponential dividends around over the coming months and years. So I think this is a very, very important step for us, and I'd encourage anyone who would like to figure out how they can take advantage of this, take initiative, or set up their own little community, either on a localized basis or on a topic basis, to reach out to Nick.
Yeah, please do reach out. And I completely agree with Yago said that this is a superpower. I believe in this non-linear ability that will happen when we learn how to collaborate together at true scale. And I think this could be one of the first communities to really get that explosive growth. So yeah, feel free to DM me, reach out to me on Discord. I would say come and head over to our Discord. We've just opened a brand new Discord, so it's a very quiet community at the moment, but we're growing week by week, and we just hang around in there. Come and talk DAOs with us whenever you like. But yeah, I believe we're over here, but feel free to ask any questions. I'm happy to hang around for another 5 minutes. So.
Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Or should we close the recording, and then if anyone would like to ask off the record question?
There's a question in the general about just basically NFTs. We use NFTs as governance identities. They're basically tokens, as you know. It's like Bitcoin, but each one of them's individual. And the way I see NFTs and fungible tokens, we've now got the way to digitally describe anything. Individual things and things that we don't care about if they're individual. So yeah, I think we've got that.
So Dropper is launching also with a governance PFP. So that's exactly what it is that the protocol is launching with the same model.
Okay, nice. Yeah, let's have a chat and collaborate. I think NFT governance is the next era of decentralized governance. We've been doing it for about 18 months. We've had like NFT governance that we had a prediction market that with reputation systems. One of the things we're quite excited about is with NFT governance, you can have individualized reputation that's not necessarily financially based. So you can have non-financial governance power within crypto systems, and I think that's the really exciting bit. It's where instead of the whales running everything, you can have governance power accrued through non-financial means, commitment to submissions of work, submissions to sub-DAOs. You can even have reputation in different domains, which leads you towards this informed consensus idea, where you can actually weight decisions to who actually knows about something or who's committed to something, rather than just arbitrary financial or one person, one vote ideas. So yeah, let's absolutely collaborate on NFT governance. I've got a feeling in about 18 months' time, there's going to be 500 projects running at NFT DAOs. So yeah, absolutely early at this point. It's definitely the next phase of DAOs in my view.
All right, Kim, maybe let's close off the recording and open it up to any off-the-record questions.
Yeah, cool. Really appreciate you inviting us along today. Very excited to be part of the ecosystem, guys. Let's collaborate in the future. I'm looking forward to it.